today we're here today with Josh Whisenant, the founder of Roger, and we're going to dive right into it. Josh, I got to be honest with you,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. I talked to a lot of folks, and I wanted to talk to you about Roger, and I wanted to talk about how you got from Stanford kind of to now with Roger and how things are going. So I know that's kind of a broad topic, but I'm just going to throw it out there at you.
No, I mean, I think that in order to start to talk about my time in construction, I couldn't talk about it without really talking about my first exposure to the industry. I don't come from a construction background. I have like basically no touch points into the industry naturally. I was in a class at Stanford as an undergrad that I was taking just to try and explore new things. It was taught by Martin Fisher, who runs Stanford's Center for Integrated Facility Engineering. It's a construction think tank. And a senior project manager from DPR walked into Martin Fisher's class. It's in like an introductory class I was in. And over a period of like a week, 3 lectures in a week, he laid out how he saved $100 million or something on a substantial hospital project in Northern California. This was a project that was finished in like 2008. I mean, I looked at that and I thought to myself, I mean, what a tremendous public service, what a place where somebody's work could make a difference. He's talking about all of these different disciplines and ideas coming together, finances and engineering and human communications. And plus, I really like the guy. We're still good friends. His name is Dean Reed. He's a construction innovator who many people will know, associated with the project with PPI and at Berkeley and all of these things.
Sure, absolutely. I just did my first PPI symposium this last December, and Dean wasn't there, but Martin was there, gave his presentation. I thought it was fantastic. All good people.
Yeah, super good people. Martin's actually an advisor to the company, and I was actually texting him, debating about the merits of BIM this morning, believe it or not.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and so to me, it was just this like incredible thing where it was like, oh my gosh, this is this massive industry that, by the way, people are not really paying attention to that well, or at least they weren't in my circles. The Stanford kind of elitist groups. And I was like, this is a real place where I could go in and make a name for myself, make a difference, have a great career, learn a lot, do something a little off the beaten path. And so that was the start. That was 2019 when that class was taught, September of 2019. You understand what probably happened 6 months later. It was called COVID. And so everything went remote.
Yeah.
And I was suddenly looking at paying $75,000 a year to do like online school, and I just couldn't quite stomach that. So I was in the master's program at that point. I had graduated and I was doing a master's in construction management because I found it so interesting. And I was like, probably going to drop out. Sorry, Martin. I owe you. No, I mean, it's true.
Right.
And I put it on hold and I went to work for a commercial contractor in Salt Lake, which is where I grew up. At Stanford, we were talking about really high level stuff, right? Level of detail, 700 BIM, whatever that means. Construction, robotics, integrated project delivery, all of these really kind of fascinating concepts. And then in a matter of weeks, I literally went from talking about that to like wearing boots and a hard hat in the field, trying to like get subcontractors to work together nicely.
There
Usually
you go.
people go the other way around, right? Usually people start in the field and they go up. I kind of started at the peak, at the pinnacle, and then I like immediately went into the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty. And so I spent like a year in the industry, and I was just watching everything unfold with kind of this mindset of like construction philosophy kind of in the background.
Sure.
And that really affected me, watching things happen and being like, okay, why is this happening this way? And so it was after about a year of that I was sitting in my childhood bedroom, quarantined with COVID, and I thought to myself, I should start a technology company to try and address problems in the space. So really, COVID gets double credit for all of my career advancements and changes.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's good. It's good that I think the path was necessary, right? Because I had kind of the opposite path a little bit. I started out in construction and started to frame houses because I needed a paycheck. And so it was one of those things where I didn't really have that kind of high level look at what the industry needed. All I knew at that point in time was I got to pay the bills, and so I got to get out there and start, pounding nails for a living. So that's an interesting journey. Obviously, like the path less taken there.
And I do feel like your path is frankly probably the more honest one. So, I would be amiss for not acknowledging that explicitly.
I don't know. It is an honest way to make a living. Now, you certainly earn every dollar that it kind of passes through your hand, for sure.
And that's one thing I've learned to love about the industry, right? Is there are a lot of people in it that are really just like adding steady value day after day to our world, and I have like a lot of respect for that.
Yeah. Well, and I think making that path for those folks a little bit easier in some way or another is certainly a noble effort. And yes, we are stuck in our ways. And I say we because I think I spend enough time out there sludging it out in the 120 or the negative 30 to be able to say we. But again, do you have any specific challenges that kind of stuck out to you that said, hey, I'm going to do a startup. I need to create Roger? Like any specific things that kind of came to mind?
I mean, how long do you want me to go here? For a while.
We got plenty of time.
So it's so funny. The insight that I had early on in my project, and this was actually kind of a not true insight, but it's going to paint a new perspective that I have on the industry that might be relevant. I was used to communicating with my classmates and people in college and everybody kind of basically with like Slack, right? Or whatever. And suddenly I got into construction and I was like responding to 70 emails a day using like 2010 Microsoft Outlook. What the heck is this, right? I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I felt like we were dropping communications all the time because of that medium where we weren't communicating effectively. And so the initial concept was to bring everybody on a project into a shared communication ecosystem where people could send messages back and forth, but attached to those messages would be like commitments or response requests. And so everybody on the project would start to have this list of all of their to-dos and outstanding items that was automatically sort of being generated by all of their communication. That was really exciting to me. And I kind of continue to believe that that's a problem. We didn't really get a lot of traction on that. And I suspect that you could guess why, but I'll say it. Trying to onboard 35 subcontractors into a new piece of software at the start of a project is basically impossible. I think a lot of people would say and ascribe that to like people in the industry are tech backwards or not very innovative. I used to believe that. I no longer do. I actually believe that fragmentation or lack of technology adoption is an intelligent strategy that people in the industry adopt intuitively based on the needs of their projects at any given time. Where if you actually look at a specific job, I go to somebody and I say, I'm going to bring you into a communication platform that's going to make it easier for everybody on that project to stay up to date. Maybe that will help that one particular project go well. But if you actually look at those subcontractors that were like resisting that, they're resisting it because suddenly they have to manage two communication systems, their email and this new thing. They have to deal with all of these new features that they don't understand how to manage. It's possible that my company would like erupt and go up in smoke in a moment. So there were actually very good reasons why I think they were resistant to it. And so I feel like there are a lot of problems in the industry that exist, but they sort of come with operating in a fragmented ecosystem. I think that fragmented ecosystem is required to deliver large capital projects with a lot of risk. And I think that technology people look down on the industry and call those problems trivial and call people tech backwards at their own expense. And I think that's a real mistake that we make in construction tech.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I have an example from my past experiences. I was on Procore before Procore was what it is today. So I'll say I was kind of an early adopter of it when I was running jobs. And I found exactly the same thing. Me having Procore was one thing. right? It was great for what I needed to do and how I needed to organize my system, but not having everybody together on that system didn't really benefit them at all. And there would always be pushback if I said, hey, I don't need to get you on Procore and we can all look at this job together. I, like you, understood that we were dropping the ball and communication on several arenas, right? We didn't have the same set of plans. There wasn't an updated set of plans that was readily available to everybody looked at the same time.
Totally.
Yeah, and when we had an owners meeting, that we would, everybody sit around the big table and go, well, here's the new dissemination of plans, or the engineer would say, oh, by the way, we changed this and this, and here's the things that we changed. And I'm like, okay, so now I got to update another set of drawings for 5 different subcontractors that I now have on the job that are waiting for these specific changes. And yet here I am with my brand new Procore system going, if there was only a way that we could communicate about this, right?
Right. I mean, but I would say, this is my hot take, right?
Okay.
This is a controversial thing that I kind of have come to believe that I think a lot of people would like super disagree with me on. For those subs probably in that meeting, at that moment, there was a lot of risk to them actually adopting Procore, if you looked at them and their businesses. And so I'm actually defending their decision not to adopt it at that time.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a disaster for you. It's a disaster for the industry. It makes technology innovation very difficult. And it makes it so that companies like Procore can actually kind of get away with like B+ software once everybody's in them, because it's so damn difficult to like switch away. But I think that there's a certain logic to people in the industry resisting innovation, because so often that innovation doesn't actually solve their problems.
Or on the other hand, the innovation only lasts so long, right?
Yep.
It has a shelf life for the several different products that have probably come out. It had a shelf life. We had it here for a second. It was okay, but it didn't, it wasn't the magic pill.
Right.
And there you are with a software or some user licenses that you can't quite fulfill for anything. And so, yeah, the hesitation is warranted. To your point, it is warranted to say, okay, this works for this project. Does it work for every project? Right. I think that's important. That is a definite evaluation that every company should have, whether you're a subcontractor or a general contractor or, specialty of any type. So, yeah, that selection of software definitely has to have some longevity and some real purpose for growth. Scalability is another component of that. Right.
Yep. And I can be, I could talk about this all day. I'm sorry. I feel like
that's totally fine. I want to talk, because that really kind of leads us into the question of, I say the buzziest of buzzwords, AI, right? It's on everybody's, the tip of everybody's tongue. We're talking about it all the time. I talk about it all the time. I get a lot of different perspectives, and give me yours. Let's talk about, is AI at this point transforming some sort of project management, or is it still in early stages here?
Well, there's a question of, is this going to, where is this now and where will this go? Right. If you want me to say, where do I think it is now? Yeah, I think that it is generally doing very little for project management in the industry right now. I think it solves very few problems. There's a lot of very expensive, not terribly useful products out there. And it's a little bit more of a proof of concept at this point than it is like a game-changing innovation. I have some hypotheses on that about like how that's going to change over the next, it's either 5, 10, or 50 years. I'm not going to pretend to know the answer to that. But I think that it will be in a very different position at some point in the future than it is now.
Sure. So tell me about your software, Roger, and what it's doing, utilizing maybe some of these tools, large language models and those types of things. So tell me a little bit about that.
I think that In order, are you okay if I actually talk about where I think AI is going in the industry a little bit before
Absolutely.
I get into how
This is open format here, man. You tell me. This is what people want to know. They want people that are insider to the industry, because here's the way I look at it. Construction is so unique in its complexity, right?
Yep.
We've just barely scratched the surface on subcontractors, general contractors, multiple platforms, multiple problems to solve, some that fall short, some that are probably do too much, some are too high level. And we're just scratching the surface of the issues that happen in the tech world. So my thought on this is construction needs to lead tech, but the only way that construction is going to lead tech is to tell them, hey, these are our problems. And tech has to open up their ears and say, let's listen for just a second and hear what's going on. So I'm definitely interested in your point of view.
I mean, and this has been kind of a multi-year evolution for me. I was actually, for the first year after ChatGPT came out, I was kind of a hater. Honestly, I was like, this is awesome for what it does, but I don't think it's changing anything so crazy right now. I still happen to think that's true, but I've changed my perspective on what it means for the industry long term. So let me walk you through it. Right now, why? Let me ask you a question. Well, it's too detailed of a question. I'm going to ask you a question that is not. I'm going to answer it.
Okay.
Why do general contractors make a profit? What do they actually do? And I'm assuming this is a general contractor that doesn't swing a hammer, right? It doesn't do any self-perform or anything like that. And what I would argue, a lot of the reason that GC makes a fee on is because of their risk management, where they take on a substantial amount of risk on this project, right? Where, hey, this thing could go bad in a variety of ways, and we're going to track all of that risk. We're going to allocate it, assign it out to different subcontractors, or assign some of it back out to the owner. And we're going to kind of be this referee in the middle of the project, right? That keeps all of that risk allocated in all of those buckets in a fair way so that a project can actually move forward. Now, this is kind of why being a general contractor sucks, is because all you're doing is fighting people on all this risk all the time. But there's real network industry value to that risk management. For example, if a subcontractor underperforms and can't keep schedule, it's the general contractor that is going to hold them accountable to that schedule. If the architect has a design mistake, it's the general contractor that will hold that architect accountable with an RFI and get paid with a change and protect the subs from that risk. So the GC sits in the middle of the project as a risk referee. Now, nobody loves that job. There's things that general contractors want to be, for example, self-perform, experts in certain building types, and all of these other things that are really uniquely valuable and some general contractors can manage, but they can't do that because all they do is manage risk. If you look at risk management on a project, in general, I would argue that none of it is terribly complicated. Weather delay. Yeah, it's snowing outside. We need to claim a change order for that. Let's go into Procore and create a new change event for weather, right? Schedule update, final milestone push today. Why did it push? Let's go and basically back charge somebody for liquidated damages if we were being sharky, right? Nobody really wants to do that. And none of it is very hard. And so what I would argue, this is like my opinion of what AI will do in 50 years, is that AI is going to take all of that like nitty gritty risk transfer stuff and commoditize it. So anybody will be able to buy a set of softwares and AIs and whatever, not anybody, but reasonable people with reasonable experience, and will basically be able to fairly quickly and easily manage all of that risk and move it around a project and keep track of it all in a good enough way. And so suddenly the value that somebody is getting paid 4% of the project value for 4% is maybe a little high, say 2.5% on hard, right? But still hundreds of thousands of dollars will basically anybody will be able to do it, right? You got a camera on your job site. It detects that there was snow and there was nobody there. It sends you an email and says, do you want to claim a weather delay day? Ding, yes. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen in a year. I'm not actually saying that's going to happen in 5 years. I think that might be 50 years out. I think we are a long way away from that. But that is the direction where we are going to go, is that all of these tasks that are fundamentally focused on maintaining the risk transfer ecosystem are going to be commoditized and automated, and the value of doing those things for general contractors will go to zero. What does that leave the contractor? Does that mean that they're useless? No, it does not, actually. It means that they've got to figure out a different way to provide value. And this is where the industry gets exciting, right? There's all this stuff that somebody should be an expert in this industry that nobody is an expert in because there's just not enough freaking time, right? General contractors should be an absolute expert in local code. Very few are, right? And so instead of being a good at risk transfer, the GC of 50 years from now will be an expert in the code of, like where I built project, Kimball Junction, Utah, wherever the hell that is, right? We GCs will be experts in very specific construction types, right? We already have this a little bit, but it's going to be much more specialized, right? I'm going to be an expert in hospital renovations. That's it. I'm going to be the best in the world at hospital renovations. Maybe the best in the world at hospital renovations in Southern California so that I can deal with HCI in a very specific way. So there's all of these additional opportunities for value that general contractors will be able to deliver and will have to deliver. And that will revolutionize the industry. And so AI is not going to be the hero of this story. But what it will change is it will take general contractors from being sort of like a villain that takes on risk and it'll encourage them, give them an opportunity to, and almost force them in many cases to provide value and become a hero of the story. That's a high level view of the industry. I can go into what I think Roger is doing about that. But I will leave it to you to ask questions or add any follow-ups. That was like a long spiel from me.
No, I think that's an excellent assessment of current status. Knowing it, just because I start to think about my experience in the industry and doing those things, I did make money off of understanding where most of my risks lie, right? And in taking that and knowing with the subs that I have what my potential outcome was going to be. Right. And knowing where I could push buttons here, there, and make things happen, but yet the risk was still there. It's a bit like, playing the slots at Vegas. You had a certain percentage outcome and you kind of, you took your chances a little bit. But again, relationships with the subs and kind of knowing what the capabilities are, knowing how many people they are, their asset management, being able to influence their asset management, it was another thing that I was able to do.
And can I pause you, Robert?
Yeah.
That is going to be local knowledge, right? That is a place where contractors will always provide value. So that's not something that can be automated away. Local relationships with subcontractors, that's one of those things where a general contractor stops being kind of like a paper pusher, a risk mitigator, and actually becomes the hero of a story of a certain project. Yeah.
And I made a comment about that the other day, talking with, I can't remember if it was a LinkedIn comment, but I said, AI will not be able to, like, jobs in North Dakota are not jobs in Texas. Right. You couldn't take a civil contractor from Texas and throw them into North Dakota. They may be great at, paving roads in Texas. Right. But you throw them into North Dakota where there's a different topography, different people, different subs, different weather, different everything. Right. Different codes, this, that, the other, different ways of building it because of temperature differences in hot and cold and all those different things. It's not going to be the same. So AI has no help for you there. You've got to know your business. You've got to be locally wise to what's going on. I'm sure there's a huge learning curve for these multinationals that go in that, maybe they send a project manager from one area over to the next. I'm sure there's a huge learning curve for that project manager or project executive to go, so wait a minute, that's not the way we do it over here.
The smart ones just go and buy a business in that location, right? I think that Skanska has bought like 15 different general contractors in the last 15 years in the United States, all around the country to do that, to manage this problem.
Right. And that's, again, I think they understand what you specifically were talking about. It is local. Being local is very, very important to the job itself, the project itself getting complete. I kind of want to talk about, you would move into Roger and we want to talk about that, but I think you touched on something I thought that was very, very important, whether it's next 5 years, next 50 years. I think a lot of people feel threatened. And I want to say a lot of people, I think when I see general contractors, that resistance, they feel a bit threatened because of affordability at a certain level for some of this new technology. affordability is one of those things that it gets more affordable as it gets better, but do they get so far behind the curve that it's no longer feasible for them to be in a profitable business? So there's that balancing act, right?
Hot take for you. Generally, I feel like general contractors know a good deal when they see one and know a bad deal when they see one. And so when they complain about affordability, basically what they're saying is, you're going to charge me $50,000 or whatever, and you're only going to give me $25,000 back. That's not good enough, right? I feel like my experience of general contractors is they know how to spend a lot of money, right? Like, they're buying concrete, they're paying like millions of dollars of subcontracts, right? And so if you can actually go up to them and say, hey man, yes, it's going to be expensive. It's going to cost you $50,000, but we really are going to deliver $100,000 of value to you. And here's why. My experience has been the price has not been a terribly difficult thing. And so my intuition on people resisting the price of AI is it's more of a return on investment issue and a lack of clear value proposition than it is like overpriced. And when I look at a lot of the AI stuff on the market, and frankly, a lot of the software on the market, including, I'll be honest here, some of the stuff that we've built in the past, the clear dollars to dollars return on investment is just not there. It's not clearly there, right? If I'm a general contractor and I'm buying software, I need to have a really clear sense on how much money I'm going to make more, or how many man hours I'm going to save, or whatever it is to drive that decision in order for me to pull the trigger.
Right. And I think there is a thing, obviously there's diminishing returns on things where it's not going to get you where you need to go, but a product that develops over time and continues to develop over time. Yeah. I think Procore is a prime example of that. Continued to develop over time, has got some more features and more features, those types of things, has that ability.
Let me push back. I'm going to push on that really quick.
I love it. Yeah, man. I'm ready.
So Procore argues that they make a project, they take something like 20% of the risk out of the project, and they make people something like 15% more efficient, right? If you go and you look at the actual productivity of construction workers and general contractors over the last 10 years,
it's a flat line, yeah.
Right? And so you have all you've got it's like Procore says that, and there is literally no evidence in the data that a project manager can manage more work with Procore than they could without. Now, they would go back and they would say, well, that's because projects are more complicated now. Or, there's lots of arguments to make. And I'm not saying that Procore is useless in any way, but I am saying that even Procore, which is kind of the best case scenario, right? Like something that's widely adopted, still don't see the financial metrics that show that is you've still got big companies that are getting along fine using old technology. And I don't like that. I don't think that's good. But when you're talking about a buyer conversation, if Procore can't go in and prove that they are really going to drive a lot of value, it's really hard for people to do that. And I think that's a lot of the promise of AI, by the way.
I think that's a great point. What's funny about that is there are so many ways to, I'll say, spin the numbers, right? Of course, Mark Twain said it best. There's lies and there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. So
well done. That was good. I love that.
Yeah. And there are ways to kind of tweak the numbers. You could say that the cases of polio are up, well, if only 3 people out of 0 have polio, they're up 300%. Or so it's a tough way to go. Right.
Right.
And I do believe, honestly, that software in itself in construction is only as good as the end user makes it, right? You're only going to be as productive as you can put that tool to use. It's the same thing with a hammer. If that thing never comes out of your tool belt, you're not going to drive any nails. Totally. Right? So there is going to be no return on investment of a $60 hammer, right? So it's the same thing. You don't use the software, or you don't use the capacity of the software, you're definitely not going to get anything out of it.
Totally.
Right. So let's talk about Roger. Let's talk about scope of work and kind of what you guys are doing.
Well, first I'll talk about kind of our approach. Okay. So I have this opinion that AI is going to change how contractors work in the next 50 years. I happen to not believe that it will be changed in the next 5 years. I think AI is too inferior and there's too many problems with it for it to get there in 5 years. So what we do is we say, look, we're going to help general contractors jumpstart this process and get a competitive advantage in actually undergoing this transformation before the technology is entirely ready in some ways. So we come in as a consultant on a project, right? So we don't just give them software to use. One moment, let me quit. I'm just getting some notifications. Let me quit my something. Okay. So we come onto a project as a consultant. We bring our software with us. We're going to manage that software for you. And we don't give you a bunch of crap that you have to manage. We don't give you bells and whistles. We don't give you a lot of buttons. We don't give you a lot of complexity. We don't give you unclear ROI. We say, we're going to write your subcontractual scopes of work for you. We're going to write the best contracts you've ever seen, faster than you've ever seen them. We're going to give them to you. We're going to let you edit them. We're going to help you all the way. And then we're going to get out of your hair. And we're not going to take your time. And by the way, it's not like there's like a time saved ROI metric or something. We say, right now, you probably have on a project 1% scope gaps, and we're going to take that down to 0.5%. And that's going to save you, you do the math on the project size, but, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's not like a maybe, sort of, woulda, coulda, like transparency, visibility, collaboration, communication, risk, whatever words Procore uses. It's like dollars and cents. And in fact, we'll go on to projects sometimes and we will look at their last project. We'll run a proof of concept with them and we'll say, where were your scope gaps? And then we'll show how our process would have caught every single stinking one of those things. And so it's kind of like, and this is really, again, this is the promise of AI in my mind, is that it's no longer just like software that like sort of helps you track things and sort of like has like unclear, fluffy returns on investment. It's like, we're literally going to go in and we're going to do this. We're going to solve the problem for you. And we're going to move away and we're going to get out of your hair. And that's really our promise. So that's what we're doing right now. We're getting incredible feedback from the market. It's come after many years of like not doing it right.
Yeah, well, I think that is on the front end of the job is where most of the time-consuming parts have become a problem, right? Especially when it comes to scope of work and risk and the subcontractor not necessarily understanding scope of work or it's not complete enough, those types of things. So I'm going to be doing another podcast coming up here with Kyle Nitchin, and we're going to be talking about the Empire State Building build. Yeah. And kind of the lean concepts that weren't there at the time, but used. They were kind of applied at the time, even though they weren't fully defined. So I'm excited about that. But one thing I thought about that was,
I'll say we're working with Kyle very close.
Oh yeah, well, it's this technology group, as far as construction technology, I think that the community keeps getting smaller and smaller when you start talking about kind of who's moving and shaking and doing things.
Right.
But I thought it was very, very interesting because I remember, I take my experience from being, spending hours upon hours at my local municipality trying to get permits or pushing on, more different drawings, for changes and things that happen. And, it took weeks, and I would sit in the lobby at Dallas and I'd sit in there and wait hours. One time I think I waited all day for my turn in line to go and, talk with the inspectors and do all these things and get my permits, pushed along a little farther. I'm not saying I got a permit that day. I'm just saying it was a task, right?
There's nothing as painful as code and permitting. It is bananas.
It's bananas. Well, and so thinking about that project, there was no coding and permitting because actually the mayor was a part of the investment group at the time. Back in the early 30s. It's really easy, it's really easy to build something, especially on that front end, build and design, when you've got somebody kind of greasing the skids of that whole thing. So I found that funny. But the front end of construction projects, right? That design period, the permitting period, this whole inspection period, these types of things, it's gotten larger and larger in scope just from the get-go. Over the years. And if we wonder, like we start to think about, well, why do projects take 5 years now or 3 years now when, this project was done in a year. Now, I do believe it was a unicorn. It was kind of the perfect,
Yep.
but I'm saying when we start to look at the things that have, the interrupters, the things that get in the way, we've got a far more, what's the word I'm looking for? We have just a larger time gap between when we actually going to start this project and how long it's going to take us for it to be designing, permitting, putting all these things together. And I think it makes a huge, and it's huge. It's very costly.
Tremendously. The reality is, I'm just going to keep talking about value to contractors. Okay. This is such a good opportunity to talk about this that I'm going to jump on it. Think about the value of having the mayor of a town on your investment committee. How many contractors do you think would not pay for that on their project?
Right.
No, seriously, every single person in the industry would pay for that. Right?
Today, somebody would raise the conflict of interest flag, right? They would.
Probably not the general contractor.
And probably not a general contractor, no, but somebody would. Maybe a competitor. A competitor.
How about this? If you could pay dollars to expedite permitting processes, especially in like the great state of California or wherever it's really hard to, there's nobody in their right mind that wouldn't pay money for them, including the contractors. And so when I look at things like that, that is value. And the way that you just talked about that, like, oh, it was really good to have the mayor on the investment committee. I'm like, oh, now we're talking about something that everybody that listens to your podcast and everybody in the industry hears and is like, oh, that's cool. I'd take that. Right. And so to me, that's the standard that construction tech needs to hold itself to, is like obvious value. Right. Now it's really freaking hard. And frankly, I think that the reality is, and this is the bitter truth of like construction technology, there's a lot of stuff that you just can't freaking do with technology. Most of the problems in construction can't be solved with. Really easy to sell startup. It's really easy to be a startup selling software to other software companies because all their problems are fundamentally software in nature. Mm-hmm. So you can actually it's a little bit like you're selling bricks to masonry subcontractors. It's like, yeah, this is our trade. This is what we do. But just like when you talked about that, there was just like such a clarity of like value that I just wanted to jump in on that. Now, as far as all the work that is required to get a project going, yeah, it's insane. And the reality is like, we're only solving a tiny part of that. I think that we have pretty clear value, but like, yeah, if you get like screwed by your city or whatever, yeah, we have nothing to say to that. I can't help you.
So thinking about that though, saying you're only solving a tiny value, but to listen to James Clear, talk about atomic habits, those types of things, solving that 1% here and that 1% there, I think that's where the value is, right?
Exactly.
Because most people, and I think this may be an industry thing where everybody's looking for that home run, right? And maybe they're thinking AI should be a home run, and it's not going to be, right? What it's going to be able to do, and this is a conversation I had before, incremental value, right? Where there's a space where it works perfectly. It works great here. Don't try to, let it work perfectly there. Let it save its, few dollars here or 1% here, 0.5% there. Let it save that in that space and then go look for something else. But don't try to, if you try to expand, you're going to blow it up and it's going to be an absolute mess. Right. Exactly. So I was going to say, I'm talking about that, but thinking about, what do you envision as being kind of that maybe next technological thing where AI might be able to fit in a little bit better?
Look, I think that the model of, so 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of construction SaaS out there. If you go to a construction conference now, everybody and their dog has basically built like some kind of Excel spreadsheet replacement to track a specific construction workflow. These are not bad pieces of software. Trust me, I believe that because I've built a bunch of them. Right. But, clear story for change orders, permit flow for permit tracking, although they have some services on top of that. I don't know. There's a bunch of safety ones, all these different things, right? I I think that that's a business model now that has been accepted and is understood by the industry. And so the way that I see AI is like, what's the next company that actually does this going to look like? And I think it's going to look like what we're doing, where we're going to come in as where it's going to be a consultant that takes on a portion of the work of the contractor, does it faster, better, and cheaper than the contractor could themselves because they have all this AI tool behind it and a person. And so I think that actually once you start to do that, you can have, there are many different places where AI can be successful, provided that you've got a person that's like guaranteeing that it's not going to be like 60% accurate. So let me give you some examples there. I think that you could have AI submittal processing, right? People are working on that from a technology side, but I think that there's a huge opportunity for people to do the consulting, the services approach to get to 100% accurate. I think that AI design review, RFI writing and looking for issues there, AI project audits to look for, financial issues on a job, AI schedule analysis, although there's a lot of software that does that. I think that a person that does that, there's a lot of people that are like really well-paid schedule consultants, right? And so there's all of these different things. And the real unifying factor that makes this an opportunity is that a person is going to come in and guarantee the outcome rather than saying, oh, I'll give you some software that might help you with this. It's going to be like, no, you're going to give me access to your Procore. I'm going to do everything else, and I'm going to give you a report at the end, whether that's submittals or financials or schedule or whatever that might be. So I think that in that business model, there are like hundreds of super valuable companies that can be founded. And it's Roger's intent to, I feel like we've got the best one and we're getting really good at the best opportunity because we're saving so much money in scope gaps and buyout issues. And our vision is to do all of that stuff, right? And we're going to be really, really good at scopes of work. And then we're going to naturally start to do more and more of these critical workflows with our customers.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on target with that. I always go back to if I'm a subcontractor, specialty contractor, if I'm doing HVAC work, and I'm out there, throwing up air conditioning units on 120-degree heat, I'm not really thinking about what my software is doing for me, right? I'm trying to think about my core competency, which is I got to get this thing installed in the next 3 days, right?
Yes.
In order to meet, I mean, again, and I never did understand that anyway, because I do see a lot of companies, and I get it. There are different views about how, strategy, like what's the best way to do this? Do we take this in-house and build our own thing? Yep. Right. But then there's also another strategy says, why would I do that when I can hire said person over here? And contractors in general, that's what they do. They hire people to get the work done that they don't necessarily specialize in. So I think that's excellent idea.
Let's go to your HVAC guy, right? All he wants to do is were we talking RTUs? All he wants to do, let's say, is get his friggin' RTUs done.
Yeah.
Right. What is all the paperwork and stuff and this is not a rhetorical question. What are the things that have to happen behind the scenes for him to get that done? Like, what are some of the tasks that have to be completed and executed on?
Right. Well, I mean, he's got the holes are all there for him. He's dropping that thing down in the hole. He's got to get it coppered in. He's got to get it all tested, set up. He's going to then have to balance it at some point. He's got a long list of things that he's got to do.
My question was bad. I'm sorry. What are all the office paperwork tasks that need to be done to support him that need to be done by that subcontractor? Like ordering materials and
right. Well, he's got a long list of things, right? He's got trucks in the field, first of all, that he's got to keep track of, make sure they've got all the proper equipment on them to finish the job for whatever job that they're on. So those have to be totally stocked. And behind the scenes of that is some sort of purchasing area that has to procure all this stuff and get it on the truck. He's probably got some sort of.
Okay. I'm going to pause you on that. This is perfect. What you just described is perfect. Trucks, like managing all of your trucks, right?
Right.
2020 Construction Tech is going to give you a software platform that's going to help you manage your trucks, right? And it may or may not help. It may or may not be better than your Excel spreadsheet, right?
Right.
2030 Construction Tech is going to be this. Somebody's going to walk up to that HVAC company and say, I will do this for you 100% end to end at a cost that is so freaking cheap, you can't even wrap your head around because we're going to have all this AI behind it. And I'm not an expert in like truck management, and,
Right.
so I can't tell you how it's going to be. And then he's just going to be like, great, go do it. I'm going to get back to work and do the thing that I actually care about doing.
Right.
And so it's not like, and so there's no software. It's not like a software thing anymore, right? It's just like pure transaction. Like, I'm just going to do this thing for you and walk away. And and I think that, and over time, as that happens and becomes more and more a thing, these companies, like, the only way you're going to get work as an HVAC guy, you've got to be damn good at putting that RTU on the roof, the best in the world, right? And that's where the opportunity is. And so suddenly you have HVAC guys that no longer have to be thinking about trucks. All they're thinking about is RTUs. And that's going to be what's really, really cool.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think that's, and again, I think that's the model of the industry itself. It's the general contracting model, just in the name itself.
Right.
Overall, we contract all these different pieces out, and I think that's not just external, but also internal. Right? You've got internal pieces that you contract out to these areas where they specialize in. That's what's done there. There is a bit of a pushback on I've got 15 different pieces of, what's your tech stack look like? I've got 15 different softwares. I've got this, and everybody's trying to say they want it on one. I want one place that I have to go to. I don't want to have to go to 15 different this, that, and the other. What do you say to that? Because again,
yeah, totally.
It is a valid argument, but then again, it's like, well, there is going to be no such thing as one one-stop shop. I just don't see it happening.
I think here's what I would say. I think that in the world the way that I'm seeing the future, right, it's not going to be, again, technology startups like mine are not going to be selling software to companies. They're going to be selling services, and they're going to back them up with technology on their end. And so instead of there being 15 different pieces of technology that they have to use and having this tech stack, it's actually going to be a guy that you go to. And so you, as the HVAC guy, are not going to have any of this software. You're going to have a weekly recurring meeting with me. And I'm going to have all this software that I manage as a technology-specific AI consultant to manage all of this and keep track of it for you. I'm going to deal with all that interface risk. I'm going to have all of this technology to keep track of all of that. And it's all going to be abstracted away from you and hidden. So you don't actually care about the software. You don't even, you're like, just like, send me the PDF reports, dude, and get on your way and let me go back to my.
I think you've invented a new role as the interface risk officer.
And that's probably just like my job description right now. Actually, what happens.
You're right.
I mean, we give scopes of work to our customers in a portal, right, where they can actually go in and edit it. But sometimes if our customer doesn't want to like access the data and have to manage and learn a new system, I just say, all right, get on a Zoom call with me. We're going to spend 3 hours and I'm going to type. You're going to tell me what you want to do with everything. And then at the end of it, they say, okay, looks good. I export all 30 of the scopes into a Word document and email them over to them, and away they go. And so they have a massive exposure to AI, a humongous amount of technology that is supporting them, and they never touch any of it. They don't have any interaction with that technology.
Right.
And it's awesome. That's like so slick for them, because it's like, dude, this is like a construction estimator. He like knows how buildings fit together. He doesn't need to know how like all this random software that like I've designed that I can barely understand, fits together. And so to me, there's this world in the future where it's like, I don't remember who it is that says let builders build. I think that's Trump, but like people just build, and we're not like, there's no tech stack.
Right. No tech stack.
No tech stack. It's just a guy. It's just it's just a contact in your phone. Wow.
All right. That's huge, really. When you stop and think about it, I don't think I'm at that point where it's like, it's hard to have that kind of view of it, especially when you're in the weeds. Right.
We are so far away from that world right now. Right. That's not something that exists in any way right now. And I think that's something special about our vision for the future of the industry and what we're doing, is because I don't see anybody else that's trying to do that.
Yeah, I think that's all good. I would kind of one last thing I was thinking about, implementing. Again, we talked early on in the conversation about resistance, pushback. People want to see this. Do you think that that's easing up? And I'm going to say I see a lot of big companies definitely embracing tech, but mid-sized level, point of entry kind of places where some folks get started. Is that easing up in those sectors too, or is that something that's it's just going to take more time?
Well, it depends. It is to the point now where there's such a strong industry standard on some of the different main platforms, including but not limited to Procore and to a lesser extent ACC Build, PlanGrid. Because all the subs expect that, and everybody that's kind of jumping between companies have seen those softwares, the actual challenge to get onboarded onto that and implemented across a business is much lower than it was 15 years ago, right? I mean, you used to have to write, subcontractor will use Procore into your subcontract, and then they would cross it off on the red line, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't really happen anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that there are these places where it's easier for a mid-sized company to actually pick this stuff up, and so there's less resistance to change in that. Do I think that there's similar resistance to change at mid-sized companies on more difficult to adopt and more unproven technologies like robotics or cameras? I think there is. And I think, right.
Yeah. I think robotics is going to have a hard time, a very, very hard time in the industry. It's so human driven. It's, I always use the example when I worked in the union, they wanted us to go work up in Chicago, and we were told, no, that's not going to happen, or we're going to flat all your tires. These are things. It's very territorial, and people are protecting their jobs. And I don't know that we're going to see too many robots that don't have some sort of damage done to them.
I mean, look, do you know about Canvas, the robot Canvas? They do like level 5 drywall. Okay.
Yeah, I think I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that.
So it's like it just like muds drywall, and it doesn't actually use tape. It just like sprays it on, and then like in these like really thin layers. And Canvas talks about like how much better they are than the normal person. Now they are, but getting the machine up a stairwell is like almost impossible.
Yeah, and it's not good. Yeah, and it's not going to cut in around rafters like if you're doing especially fire taping and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And so I mean, this is kind of what I've been going back to, and this is the theme of what I believe in construction now. Like, as soon as there's a robot that really clearly and obviously saves a lot of money, it's going to get bought. It's going to happen. But when you actually look at there's all the Spot the Robot dogs, right? I know about a project that bought a $200,000 Spot the Robot dog, and all it did was like walk around the job site twice a week to take pictures. I bet you I could hire an intern for less than that, man. Right?
Yeah.
And so when there's a technology that has a value proposition that is like pretty hard to justify, it doesn't succeed. Now, I think that the one that I have seen that breaks that mold a little bit in some cases, not all, is Dusty. I think Dusty has had, they do like layout, they like print layouts on concrete and stuff.
I've seen that.
But I do know that there are companies that have had real return on investment and real success with that. And I think they get a lot of credit for that. It's not everywhere, but it happens sometimes. And so I think that there are places where like robots get like localized traction because there's like actual cash dollar value that those robots generate for businesses.
Yeah.
And by the way, like you can't go in like a robot sales guy. And I'm sorry, I have a whole thing about robots and I kind of like to bag on it. But like, a construction sales guy likes to say like, oh yeah, my robot it only is going to cost you $30 an hour to operate. And a person costs you $50 an hour all inclusive. So here's the ROI. You have to be able to say like, well, what about like the cost of the person that's to manage the robot and the cost to like clean up the job site to get it done correctly, and the cost to train the guy. And there's all this added cost in there that they'll exclude from their ROI calculations, and the contractors know that stuff is real. They're not like they weren't born yesterday. They're very intelligent people, and so they look at that and go, it doesn't really pencil out. And then you have tech companies that are trying to like pull the wool over their eyes and convince them that it does. And that's like really where the tech industry and construction gets itself into troubles.
Well, I think that is, and I think to to kind of boil it down to brass tacks, I think that has been the issue between tech and construction for a long time. Is tech has tried to approach it from what they see on the surface as what construction is. Right. Yep. This is what I see on the surface is what this is what you guys do. You guys hang around, you eat some donuts in the morning, you go in, you put up a few metal studs and, you've got, and then you go on break, or you're leaning on this shovel over here, whatever. They kind of see it from the surface level. It's like, what you guys do is really easy. It's really, really simple. You guys aren't solving any problems. On the construction side of things, everybody over there is going, yeah, okay. Let's just be realistic.
Right.
I can mention 5 different things right now that you cannot do with that robot automatically.
I just pulled up like some good stock construction photos, right, of all of the corny shit that people pretend construction looks like. Let's just share my screen. Oh, I don't have screen share. Well, no, yes, I do.
Yeah, you
let's
do.
Just throw this up, right? How many times does a project look like this? Right? Like, come on.
Yeah,
all the smiles and the handshakes. I mean, like, are you?
Yeah, kidding? I like the freshly pressed high vis vest. It's like, oh, you just got that one off the rack there. I like it.
I'm not even going to click on this photo. I don't even.
Yeah, don't even go there. Yeah.
Right, like paper plans. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is just crap. I mean, this is not. It's just crazy.
Yeah, stock photo of construction. I think that may be the view that maybe some technicians have of construction itself. Like if I go there with a clipboard and a hard hat, I'll fit right in. Right.
And let me tell you something that's here's a little bit more of a controversial take. Okay. People that leave the construction industry and try and work in tech, myself included, have a tendency to do the same thing. That's you can work in the industry for 20 years and then you start selling technology and you flip into this different kind of mindset where you start to see yourself as more valuable than you actually are. Mm-hmm. So actually, it's not as simple as oh, we're going to go hire a bunch of construction people to work at our tech company. That's not true.
It's not true. I'm a prime example of that. I'm a prime example of that. I'm a 30-year, construction guy. I've been pounding nails. Like you could say, what is the old saying? Guy, you say I was born on a stack of 8s, and so then I've been in the tech portion of this world for about 3 years now, and I can honestly say I still have a ton to learn about how this applies. As far as how
hard.
It's super hard. No. There's logic that has to go into what you're designing in your technology side that has to emulate real life over here, and that's very, very difficult because most of the time real life is not logical.
Exactly.
It's not logical.
Exactly. And so, no, I mean, I like to roast construction tech, but the reality is you actually have a lot of people that really want to be empathetic for the industry and want to solve big problems. And it's just damn hard to do. And
it is extremely difficult.
And once you build something and you put your life and your heart and soul into it and you think that it's solving something, it's very difficult for you to get the feedback from the industry that says this is not actually solving it.
Well, I got to give it up to you, man. For you to jump into the construction tech world and start up a company like Roger, my hat is off to you. My hard hat is off to you to say that. But no, really, it takes a lot of bravery, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts to do it. So thank you for doing it because what I think is that I think that what you do, it does really solve some issues for some folks and makes things better. And I hope to continue this conversation at some point in a few months. We're going to maybe talk again and
let's do it.
See how things are going at Roger and see what the 2025 shaping up to be like.
If it's anything like the last few weeks, hold on to your horses, buddy. Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Talk soon. Bye.